So I put off watching Ricky Gervais's new series Afterlife because it looked kind of depressing, like a downer. You know, he's lost his wife and he's just moping around and all that. And don't get me wrong, I love Ricky Gervais's comedy. I love all his shows and series that he's written and created. They've all been brilliant, from The Office to Extras to I haven't seen Derek yet. I've seen maybe one episode of that, and that seemed pretty good too. So I wasn't, in the mood for Afterlife because it seemed, to be, it looked like it was going to be a negative sort of show. But wow, was I wrong? All right. Yes, the premise sounds very depressing. He loses his wife to cancer and he loses all meaning in his life and all will to live is just gone. And he's just walking around a husk of a man, an empty shell, depressed, suicidal, very sad. But through the course of the 2 seasons that I watched, it's one of the most uplifting and inspiring shows I've seen in a long time. And who would have thought, Ricky Gervais would make a show like this? I mean, I should have known, because if you watch Derek, you can see there's a lot of heart in that show as well. Okay? Ricky Gervais is not just a funny man. He's a very deep and talented writer. And he knows how to write emotional, inspiring, and things that can touch your heart as well. All right? He's a very talented guy. And I love his comedy is hilarious. The show is so well written. All the characters are sort of over the top, but in hilarious ways, because you can sort of, there are people, real people like these people. These are just exaggerated versions of real character traits that you see in lots of different people and sometimes even in yourself. But Ricky Gervais's acting as Tony was phenomenal. He can really play serious roles really well. All right. I've got nothing but praise for him in this. The guy who plays his brother-in-law, Matt, he was great. His friend Lenny, the girl who plays Kath who works at the newspaper as well. They all have these great character arcs. All the characters do. And you see Ricky Gervais's character, Tony, just really start to appreciate the people in his life, because after his wife died, he became so negative, so nihilistic, and he was being an asshole to people. And you see him start feeling really bad about that, because he meets this woman at the cemetery that sits and just, has time there staring at the headstone of her own husband and sort of meditating and being at peace there in the park. And he starts a friendship with her, and she's like a real sage to him. She gives him a lot of words of wisdom about how, it feels like there's no meaning left to his life and no reason to carry on, but you can find so much worth and value and peace in being of service to other people. And that's such a great uplifting message. That's what's great about this show. It's got a very positive message. You wouldn't think it looking at the trailers and, maybe just based on the surface level premise, but it really does have a great message by the end of the show about being of service to others, finding value, worth, and peace in that, and purpose in life, to being a good person and helping other people. And he starts to do that from being a dick and an asshole to everybody. He starts being nice to them, and he starts being nice to the nice people and helping them out. And he comes to build great friendships with them, especially like his postman, who is that now he's a character as well, Postman Pat, and the sex worker that he befriends, a prostitute, and he invites her into his house, and she thinks it's going to be for a job, but no, he invites her in, and she ends up cleaning his house, and then she doesn't even take money from him. She just likes talking with him, and they become good friends, and he helps her out and sets her up with the postman. It was great. And then he meets the nurse at the nursing home where his dad is, and his dad's got dementia, but he goes and visits him every day. And his poor old man, he doesn't really know what's going on. Keeps asking about his daughter-in-law, which just sort of like is a knife in the heart for Ricky Gervais's character, because it just keeps reopening the wound, and that she's passed away. And his dad is played brilliantly by the guy from Game of Thrones who plays Walter Frey. He played a really great. He played it really well as a man in an old person in decline with dementia. I was very believable, and The nurse, played by Ashley Jensen, she's also in Extras. And she's just something so endearing about this girl. She's so sweet and nice and cute. And she's just very pleasant, always on the screen. And she sort of wins the heart of Tony, but he's afraid to let her in because he feels like he's cheating on his wife. And so they just form this great sort of platonic friendship, even though she's really interested in him. But he sort of can't open up enough to allow her into his heart. And that's very interesting to watch that play out. And one of the highlights in terms of comedy has got to be Paul Kaye. Now, this guy was also in Game of Thrones, and he was also in another great show called The Stranger, and which is on Netflix, so I recommend that as well. And in this show, he's the psychiatrist that Tony and his brother-in-law later on go to. And this guy's out of this world with the cringe, and he's bloody hilarious. And his hair in it was killing me. His hairstyle, because usually this actor, I don't know in real life if he's bald or not, but he's bald, like he's very balding in Game of Thrones and in The Stranger. So I assume he was wearing a wig or a toupee, but it's so ridiculous, and it's just bloody hilarious. And he's like he carries on like one of these sort of eternal bachelors who never settles down, and he's always going out with his mates and pulling tail and, you know, getting ladies. And some of his lines that he says in it, I don't know how he said it with a straight face. I saw some of the bloopers, and it was pretty hard for them to get through some of that dialogue. But Paul Kaye, standout, absolute standout. I'm not going to ruin some of the things he says, but laugh out loud humor levels with that guy. My God. He's got his little nephew George in it. That's a nice, endearing little relationship between them two as well. He helps him out in a very inappropriate way, let's say, by threatening one of the kids that's bullying him at school. But the show is just, his intentions are usually good, even when he's very upset and nihilistic. He's not lashing out of malice. It's just out of pain and hurt that he feels inside. And he learns that that's wrong, and he changes his ways. And that's why I really like the show. It's all the characters have these great character arcs, especially Tony, who was a great guy who was periodically and momentarily broken emotionally by the death of his wife. But he comes full circle back to his true nature, which is a good-hearted, kind man who's just extremely hilarious. And another one of the standouts in this show, but just very, very disturbingly cringe, but hilarious at the same time, is the insane man. Oh my God. There's this insane guy. He's like a hoarder. And yeah, Brian, that's his name. And he's completely insane, literally full on insane. And he's a hoarder, and he's like a aspiring poet, actor, or comedian, stand-up comedian. Because at the end there's a talent show, and he gets up there and tells these extremely graphically sexual jokes in front of an auditorium full of families. It's insane. And the shit this guy says, just out of nowhere, again, as hilarious as the psychiatrist. And I don't know how they deliver these lines with a straight face. It's unbelievable to me. But the show is, in terms of the comedy levels, it's up there with The Office and Extras. All right? Maybe not as much comedy in it as those shows, but this show has something that they don't as much. Like the Extras had a bit of heart in it as well, and so did The Office here and there, especially in the last episode. But this show had a lot of heart, and a lot of very emotional sort of moments that really, you know, and it's not overplayed. There wasn't overacting in it. Ricky Gervais is really good at selling emotions without really overacting. He's very believable. And the funny thing is, Ricky Gervais is an avowed atheist. Everyone knows this about the guy, right? And there's a few moments in the show where he talks about his atheism and all that in the show. His character does, which is the beliefs of Ricky Gervais himself. But as a Christian myself, I've never disliked Ricky Gervais because, even though he promotes his atheism and all that's his opinion, he's entitled to it, but he never does it in a malicious way. Even in his comedy, his stand-up comedy, yeah, he mocks Christians and he mocks believers and stuff like that, but it never feels malicious to me. It never feels like he's, has any hatred towards us. It's just his opinion. He disagrees with me on that issue, but so what? He's always seemed like a genuinely nice guy to me. Believe it or not, I feel the same way about Christopher Hitchens, and he was a fervent atheist as well. But I always believed Ricky Gervais and Christopher Hitchens, they seem to have a heart of gold, these guys. They seem to be well-intentioned guys who, for whatever reason they dislike religion, it's because they personally felt that it was, had a negative influence on people, and that was from their personal experiences in life. Fair enough. That's their opinion. I've had a different experience with religion. I find it very uplifting, very, provides me a lot of peace, and it's the only worldview that makes any kind of sense to me whatsoever. Scientifically, rationally, logically, it's the only thing that makes sense to me. Ricky Gervais, it doesn't make sense to him. But the point being, I'm never offended by it when I see it in his shows, ever. And even if I was, it wouldn't make me want to stop watching his shows either, because I still find a lot more value in the show from the values and the morals that he pushes in his shows. I find them very uplifting. And that's how I felt about this show. So it's a high recommend, absolutely. And that's the other thing about Ricky Gervais I've always liked. The way I love the way he gets up there and gives shit to the Hollywood celebrities and the elitists and who stick their nose up towards the rest of the average non-famous people, the working class, the normal people of the world. Celebrities tend to think they're above us and better than us and want to lecture us politically and ideologically and all this shit. And Ricky Gervais has never been like that. He always seems like he grew up a working class guy, I believe, and he feels like he still has that mindset. And he's never looked down on average people. Never. Not in his writing, in his comedies, not in his shows either. Yeah, he makes a lot of jokes and stuff like that, but it's always just jokes. You can tell the guy is a genuinely decent, down-to-earth, non-elitist kind of guy. And I've always appreciated that about his comedy and about the shows he writes and his acting and all that. And so I'm a fan of Ricky Gervais. I've always liked him. And this show was sort of another level for him, I believe, in his writing and his acting. He really went to another level with his serious acting. And a lot of people don't take him seriously because he's mainly a comedy actor. But this show really showed that he can do it. He can do a lot of serious, darker emotions, and he nails it. And it's believable. More believable than a lot of the shit I see in Hollywood movies now. And so it's a feel-good show. It's a highly recommend from me. It's hilarious at the same time, having a lot of heart and being uplifting and inspirational by the end of the show. And how could I forget to mention his dog? His beautiful, sweet dog in the show. And she's very pivotal to the show, actually, because she's the catalyst for him to continue living. Because he's suicidal after his wife passes away, and the only thing that stops him from killing himself is the fact that the dog was hungry. And and if he didn't stay alive, the dog would starve. So he keeps himself going. It's the first event that keeps him living. And then from then on, he's able to go on this journey of, rediscovering his self-worth and the meaning of life. And so the relationship with him and the dog is very endearing, really nice, and just part of what makes this show such a sweet, nice show with a great message, uplifting, inspirational, and hilarious all at the same time. So it's just an all-round feel-good experience, and I highly recommend it. If you're a fan of comedy in general, if you like Ricky Gervais' stuff, it's a must-watch, or just British comedy. It's right up there. It's one of the better TV shows I've seen in a while, especially to do with comedy, and just had so much damn heart. You got to watch it. Highly recommend. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Please like, share, subscribe. Thanks for watching this far. Take care, be good, and I'll see you later.